Now let's take a closer look at this array thing and what we can do with it and how we can create it. Because here we only see one way of creating an array. We can also create an array by using the var keyword and then giving the variable any name of our choice. Let's say we have a couple of product names, so I'll choose product names here. And now I don't want to initialize it immediately, I just want to declare this variable and make it clear that it should contain an array as a value. So it's not a string, which would be a single value, but instead an array of strings. Same syntax as down there. Square brackets in front of the type of value that should be stored in that array. Now, when creating such an array, you also typically want to set a length for that array so that it's not an empty array which has no items at all. And you do that by adding that length, so the number of items that should be stored in that array between the square brackets. So we could use 4 again or 3. It really depends on how many items we want to store. Let's go with 4 here. With that, I'm creating this array, and if we now print that without assigning any values, if I print my product names like that, and we then open that terminal again, if we run our code, we see this. It's very important to note that the program doesn't crash or anything like that. Instead, the null value that's now set for product names is now simply an array with 4 empty slots. And that's what this in the end represents. Now, of course, we could set product names equal to an array now by, again, let's say creating an array like that. And then we could pick different names like a book and so on. And you also don't have to set all the names. If I just set one name and I run this program again, you see one name is set and the other slots are still left empty, so that's possible. But you also sometimes have the scenario that you want to set specific values. Let's say the second value in an array. Or you want to read a specific value instead of outputting the entire array. And therefore, that's another key mechanism that you need to know as a Go developer. How you can target individual values in an array so that you don't always have to set or read the entire array as we're currently doing it. Now, for that, first of all, to get rid of those yellow squiggly lines, I'll merge this into one line here, like that. And then I want to show you that syntax for accessing individual items. Let's say we want to print the third price in the prices array. So here I want to print prices, but not the entire list, but just the third value. For that, we get a special notation that allows us to access a specific value in an array. We again use square brackets, but now not to create a new array, but instead after a variable name that holds an array to tell Go which specific item we want to access. For a struct, we used the dot notation, but for arrays, that's not available because arrays are not structs. Instead, for arrays, we use square brackets. And now we also don't have key names for those different values. I mean, where would those key names be? But instead, all those values have unique index values, which are automatically assigned. And the logic here is very simple. The index values always start at 0 for the first element. And that can be a gotcha. It's not 1 for the first element, but 0. So if you want to output the first element, you would write prices and then 0 between square brackets. So if you want to output the third element, we need which value here? 2, because we have 0, 1, 2. This has an index of 2. So that's how we get access to the third element. And that's just something to keep in mind. Thankfully, it's the same in most other programming languages that arrays or lists, or however that feature might be called there, start at index 0. So with that, if we save this and open our terminal, If we now run this program again, we see that 45.99 is being output. And that is how we can create arrays and how we can read single values from arrays. We can, of course, now also set single values. For example, if you want to set, let's say, the third product name, we did set the first one thus far. The other slots are left out empty. If we want to set the third one, we can set product names and then again target the third element, which still has an index of 2, and set this to a specific value, like a carpet. Now on product names, we'll have the first value being set and the third value being set, and the second and fourth values will still be empty. But that's fine, that is something you can do. With that in place, if we run this program again, we output a book, then our empty blank slot, then a carpet, and then another blank slot in this array. That's how that works, and that's how you can work with arrays. But that's far from everything that you need to know about arrays and that you can do with arrays.